Hello guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Vamika and I will be reading the stories of New Images English of grade 6 and solving the questions and answers and telling you about the rhyme scheme of the poems. Chapter 1 of New Images English grade 6. Mr. Toad's Adventure lands him in a disaster. Before you read, Kenneth Grahame was a Scottish writer famous for his work, The Wind in the Willows. He was born in Edinburgh, Scotland. He spent most of his childhood living with his siblings and his grandmother. He wrote various essays and children's stories. His stories for children captured the essence of childhood, the golden age, and its squalid dream days are some of his other published works. Mr. Toad's Adventure is an excerpt adapted from The Wind in the Willows, published in 1908. This story revolves around the adventures of four characters: Rat, Mole, Badger, and Mr. Toad of Toad Hall. Grahame used to make up these fantastical bedtime stories for his son, Alistair. During his lifetime, Grahame wanted to wander here and there. This can also be seen in his story, as Mr. Toad has the greatest desire of having adventures here and there. One bright summer morning, Mr. Toad was walking briskly along the high road. He strode along till he reached a little town. He was exceedingly hungry after his long walk, so he marched into an inn, ordered the best luncheon, and sat down to eat it in the coffee room. He was about halfway through his meal when a familiar sound approaching down the street made him start and fall a trembling all over. The poop poop drew nearer and nearer. The car could be heard turning into the inn yard and coming to a stop. The party entered the coffee room, hungry, talkative, and all in praise of the car that had brought them along so well. Mr. Toad was all ears. He listened eagerly to their conversation for a time, but at last he could stand it no longer and slipped out of the room quietly. As soon as he got outside, he sauntered round quietly into the inn yard. "There cannot be any harm," he said to himself, "in my only just looking at it." The car stood in the middle of the yard, quite unattended. Mr. Toad walked slowly round it, inspecting it. "I wonder," he said to himself, "I wonder if this sort of car starts easily." Next moment, Mr. Toad was found seated in the driver's seat, holding the handle of the car. As the familiar sound of the car broke forth, the old passion seized on Mr. Toad and completely mastered him. He pulled the lever and swung the car round the yard and out through the archway. All sense of right and wrong seemed temporarily suspended for Mr. Toad. He sped so fast, not knowing where he was going. He was only conscious that he was Mr. Toad once more. Mr. Toad at his best and highest. Mr. Toad, the terror, the traffic queller, the lord of long tail, before whom all must give way or be smitten into nothingness and everlasting night. He chanted as he flew, and the car responded with booming sound. He was living his hour, reckless of what might come to him. He increased his pace even more when he heard the police siren. He thought he might escape, but he was caught at the next turn of the road. A chubby cop with a handlebar moustache approached him with a stern look on his face and demanded, "May I see your license, mister?" "License?" retorted Mr. Toad, huffing in the driver's seat. "I was just testing how fast this marble could go. And excuse me, I don't need any license." Next moment, Mr. Toad was seen standing in the court of law. He was found guilty of stealing a car, driving dangerously, and cheating the police. "What is the very stiffest penalty for such kind of offense?" asked the chairman. The clerk scratched his nose with his pen. "Some people would consider," he observed, "that stealing the motor car was the worst offense, and so it is. But driving dangerously and cheating the police undoubtedly carry the service penalty, and so they owe. Supposing you were to stay 12 months for the theft, which is mild, and 4 years for the furious driving, which is lenient, and 15 years for the cheek, which was pretty bad sort of cheek. Those figures, if added together correctly, totaled up to 20 years. An excellent suggestion, said the chairman approvingly. Prisoner, it's going to be 20 years for you this time. And mind, if you appear before us again upon any charge, whatever, we shall have to deal with you very seriously. Then the brutal minions of the law fell upon the hapless Mr. Toad. They loaded him with chains and dragged him from the courthouse. Mr. Toad shrieked and protested across the marketplace, where the spectators attacked him with carrots and popular catchwords. He passed under the frowning archway of the grim old castle. He passed guard rooms full of grinning soldiers off duty, who coughed in a horrid, sarcastic way at him. He passed men-at-arms in casket of steel, grating threatening looks at him. He passed the thumbscrew room. At last, they reached the door of the grimmest dungeon that lay in the heart of the innermost keep. There, at last, they passed, where an ancient jailer sat, figuring a bunch of mighty keys. "Odds bodikins," said the sergeant of police, taking off his helmet and wiping his forehead. "Wake up and take over from us this wild Toad, a criminal of deepest guilt and matchless artfulness and resource. Watch and ward him with all your skills." The jailer nodded grimly, laying his withered hand on the shoulder of the miserable Mr. Toad. The rusty key creaked in the lock. The great door clanged behind them, and Mr. Toad was a helpless prisoner in the remotest dungeon of the best guarded keep of the southest castle in all the length and breadth of merry England. Now it's time for True and False. Mr. Toad was startled by the sound of a truck. False. Mr. Toad didn't want to steal the car. True. Mr. Toad broke the traffic rules. True. Mr. Toad was let go because he was a wealthy merchant. False. Mr. Toad was a helpless prisoner in the remotest dungeon. Questions and answers. Number 1. What was Mr. Toad doing when he heard the sound of the car? Answer. Mr. Toad was halfway through his meal when he heard the sound. Number 2. Describe Mr. Toad's adventure after he picked the car from the inn yard till he was caught. Answer. Mr. Toad walked slowly round inspecting it. Next moment he was found seated in the driver's seat holding the handle of the car as the familiar sound broke forth. The old passion seized on Mr. Toad and completely mastered him. He pulled the lever and swung the car round the yard and out through the archway. He got carried away by his emotions and was driving carelessly. He increased his pace when he heard the police siren. He was confident that he would escape, but he was caught in the next turn of the road. Question 3. How did Mr. Toad behave when he was caught by the traffic police? Answer. Mr. Toad was back answering and was acting bossy. Question number 4. Who was Mr. Clerk? What was his opinion on the crime committed by Mr. Toad? Answer. Mr. Clerk was a member of the court of law. His opinion on the crime committed by Mr. Toad was that stealing a car, driving dangerously, and cheating the police undoubtedly carried the service penalty. Question number 5. Describe the journey of Mr. Toad from the courthouse to the dungeon where he was imprisoned. Answer. Mr. Toad was loaded with chains and was dragged from the courthouse. Mr. Toad shrieked and protested across the marketplace, where the spectators attacked him with popular catchwords. He passed the frowning archway of the grim old castle. He passed men-at-arms and casket of steel, greeting threatening looks at him. At last, a jailer locked him in the dungeon. Think and answer. Question number 1. Why do you think Mr. Toad was consumed by the desire to drive the vehicle despite knowing that it didn't belong to him? Question 2. Do you think Mr. Toad was a thief? Explain your answer. No, in my opinion, Mr. Toad was not a thief, as his intention was not to steal. He could not control his emotions. Question number 3. Do you think the penalty meted out to Mr. Toad was justified? No, I think the penalty meted out to Mr. Toad was not justified because 20 years are a lot, so I think Mr. Clerk could reduce the number of years. Thank you. If you want the explanation of this chapter, either in Hindi or in English, please write it in the comment section.